Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist, thank you for coming in. Viewers, excuse me. Have you ever heard of Malign? I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Let's get straight into it, viewers.
Won't call for a ceasefire. Happy to talk weasel words, but weasel words are not going to stop war crimes. You can't even bring yourselves to condemn Israel for the almost 11,000 killings that they have done. I mean, how much cowardice are we going to see from this government? I mean, truly, have a heart. There are people out there who are telling us that they don't really want to be used anymore by the Labour Party as props to come and take photos with us at our religious events, at Eid, at Ramadan, during Iftar. They're tired of it. They are tired of being taken for granted. You need to represent the people who elected you. Hospitals are under siege. There are babies in incubators who are now dying. Wake up, Labour.
No, wake up, Australia, to these people in our parliament. These people have an agenda for a war that really has absolutely nothing to do with us. We don't realise how fragile our country is at the moment. We're giving away our gas. We can't afford our electricity bills, which is expected, I'm sorry for the bad news, but they are expected to eventually go up another 50%. Who is this person? This person is Malign. She's on taxpayers' money. I hope Penny Wong surfaces here in a minute.
Labour, wake up and call for a ceasefire now.
I noticed in that contribution there was not one mention of terrorism, of Hamas, of hostages.
Now listen, this is where we've got to stop listening to these people that are saying Labor isn't defending Palestine. They are, but they're not going to defend Hamas. The Honourable Penny Wong.
There's not one mention of terrorism, of Hamas, of hostages.
Order.
This is not a binary debate. I would ask the Greens political party to reflect on how they are handling this debate. I would ask them to reflect on whether this is a time where you want to make political differences about political parties, or whether this is a time where all of us as political leaders might actually need to ensure that the distress and grief that we all know is in our communities, in the Jewish community too, single loss of life since the Holocaust in any day, as well as our Palestinian, Arabic and Islamic communities. Maybe our job is not to amplify that distress. Maybe our job is not to foment division in the hope that there is some political advantage. Maybe our job as leaders is to try and... Here we go again. Maybe your job as a leader is not to chant a slogan and not to amplify distress into anger and violence, which is what we have seen. Maybe...
Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, I think we have to take our hat off to Penny Wong. Despite her indifferences on different subjects, she really has battled hard for a fair and transparent resolution for the situation in the Middle East, which is really indirectly connected to us. We're giving hours upon hours of taxpayers' money time in the Senate to this issue. And we need to start to understand that the Labor Party has done, as they did with Fatima payment, everything they fairly can to help these people along.
Our job as leaders is to ensure that we do not allow this to divide our country.
She doesn't want it to divide the country, and it is. It absolutely is. But let me just say, it's not dividing the Australians, it's dividing the foreigners. Now we've got to ask ourselves, who are these people serving? Listen, here's Malign again.
The Labour government couldn't sink any lower on Palestine. They have made the appalling and extremely irresponsible decision to suspend funding for UNRWA. 4 months of Israel's genocide with 27,000, more than 27,000 Palestinians.
So she's complaining about the funding to a foreign organisation, right? These are the people that are in our Senate. She's complaining about the funding for Palestine. Why doesn't she ask the Australians about all this and see what answer she gets?
Killed, including over 11,000 children, and you haven't uttered a word of condemnation. Yet, it took you no time at all to suspend life-saving funding to UNRWA, further enabling collective punishment of Palestinians as Israel continues its rampage and massacre in Gaza.
Okay, let's have a look at this UNRWA. Now, a number of Western countries are suspending funding to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, the largest humanitarian relief body in Gaza, amid Israel's allegations that a dozen aid workers were complicit in the Hamas-led attacks on October 7th. Right? They've been implicit. This is a report regarding that. Now, this woman isn't going to mention any of this, but this is the reality of it. And it's several Western countries, not just Australia. We're not stupid.
The Secretary General is horrified by this news and asked Mr. Lazzarini to investigate this matter swiftly and to ensure that any UNRWA employee shown to have participated or abetted in what transpired on October 7th or in any other criminal activity be terminated immediately and referred for potential criminal prosecution. To protect the agency's ability to deliver humanitarian assistance, Commissioner General Lazzarini has taken the decision to immediately terminate the contracts of all these staff members and launch an investigation in order to establish the truth without delay.
Okay, so what we've got is another case of Hamas wrecking it for everybody. Hamas are the ones that have ruined it for Palestine. These people need to be confronting the Hamas politicians, not the Australian ones. This is the United Nations.
There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza who rely on UNRWA's humanitarian work, who rely on humanitarian assistance, even more now than they did before. It is the work that UNRWA does remains critical today, and we very much hope that while UNRWA that a number of things have to happen at the same time. UNRWA has to ask OIOS to do this investigation. The Commissioner General, I think, has taken very swift and strong measures right away. At the same time, our humanitarian work needs to continue. Lives depend on it.
And these people are desperate because now they've got a situation where Hamas employees, Hamas working in UNRWA, how do you work that out, have been busted. They've been figured out by the Western world, and we're not going to support it. Now, this woman's doing a crude about it. Now, let's make it clear what Labor has done to try and shut these complainers up.
These protesters are emboldened by the Labor government. We have seen this with anti-Semitism in the country being allowed to flourish. And once the horse has bolted, there's no going back, because it has been allowed to go on for so long, it's now impossible to crack down. And what sort of a message does it send pro-Hamas protesters when the Albanese government hauls in Israel's ambassador for a dressing down over his country's war in the Middle East? And they send in a junior Burger minister to do it. More on that in a moment. Israeli Ambassador Amir Maimon was formally summoned to a meeting in Canberra 10 days ago and warned that the Jewish state could not expect Australia's support if it goes to war against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. What an appalling move as Israel desperately fights for its own survival and as it faces a conflict now on all fronts. There are fears of a tit-for-tat response by Hezbollah, which Australia lists as a terror organisation.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, do you believe that Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organisations? Because the Labor government has now said we will not be allies of Israel. How much more do these people want? I tell you, we're shooting ourselves in the foot listening to these fools.
And since the conflict began, 60,000 Israelis have been forced to flee northern Israel due to attacks from the Iran-backed terror group. Yet, in the event of Israel having to protect its citizens from yet another terror group, Australia has told the ambassador, well, don't expect our support. They want Israel to just down tools and just simply walk away. And let's not forget, it was Hamas who started this war, not Israel. Now,
and it most certainly, all you Muslims in Australia and you politicians that are getting all mixed up in this with our taxpayers' money, it's not an Australian war either. It's got nothing to do with it.
Now, formally summoning an ambassador is considered a serious step in the diplomatic world. Given the gravity of such an important message that Labor chose to convey, well, you'd think they would send in the Foreign Minister Penny Wong to deliver it personally. But in fact, it was not delivered by Foreign Minister Penny Wong, but was left to Ms Wong's underling, Assistant Minister Tim Watts. How appalling. Israel's ambassador wasn't even given the courtesy of a visit by Penny Wong in person. It is a slap in the face to Jewish Australians and Israel, who has been an important ally, from the Anzac kiss in Beersheba in 1917, which ultimately helped create the State of Israel, to the present day. I mean, Israel has supported Australia, not to mention the important contribution of Jewish Australians in this country. But that's all been ripped to shreds over the course of the last 9 months by Labor. It's betrayed Israel and emboldened the anti-Semitism like what we saw today at Parliament House.
The Foreign Minister Penny Wong needs to step up today and explain exactly what it was that her Assistant Minister Tim Watts meant when he hauled in the Israeli ambassador and told him that if our friend and ally Israel found itself in a war with Hezbollah, a listed terrorist organisation, that they could not count on our support. That is a deeply disturbing revelation. Hezbollah has been attacking northern Israel since the 7th of October every day. This is the world's best armed terrorist organisation.
The relationship between Australia and Israel, once cherished, is under more pressure than ever. It's so bad, sources have told the Daily Telegraph Mr Maimon's relationship with Senator Wong has been in the freezer for several months. It started with a limp response to the burning of the Israeli flag on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. Labor rewarded Hamas by backing Palestinian statehood at the United Nations vote. It appointed a special advisor to monitor Israel's response to its airstrikes, which killed Australian Zomi Frankham. And now the summoning of the ambassador is a new low. The dressing down marks a bad flashpoint in the relationship. The horse is well and truly bolted, and I fear there is no going back.
So viewers, Australians, what are these people on about? Honestly, what are they on about? They got no idea what's happening in our country. They're supposed to be representing us taxpayers, and this is what's brought me to focus at the moment on this woman here, Malign. The Greens MP refuses to answer Hamas question. This is 3 minutes ago, the 7th of September 2024. Story by Jessica Wang. Greens Deputy Leader Malign has repeatedly refused to answer whether she believes Hamas should be dismantled, saying it's not up to her to say who should be gone or not. So we know what that means. Bear with me. Appearing on the ABC's Insider for the first time, the Senator was asked 5 times whether the Islamic terrorist group responsible for the October 7 attacks needed to be either removed or disbanded. However, she deflected her answers multiple times. Speaking about the Israel and Palestine conflict at first, Senator Farquhar said the presence of Hamas had nothing to do with recognising Palestinian statehood, but it has, because it's the Palestinians that are suffering at the hands of Hamas. Israel just isn't attacking Israel, they're trying to annihilate Hamas. Palestinian statehood is about Palestinians being able to self-determine, she said. Well, Hamas won't let them self-determine. So she's bringing all this rubbish to our parliament, and it needs to go to the Hamas parliament. Right? This is what us Australians need to start demonstrating about, or saying something about, or objecting. They need to take all this rubbish over to the Middle East and leave Australian politics and join the Gaza politics or Palestinian politics and fight it from over there. Asked by journalist David Spears whether it would be okay for Palestine to choose Hamas, she accused him of creating a hypothetical scenario. Palestinians won't be able to choose because Hamas just stand over them. However, Spears maintained his grilling, asking, well, if it's not hypothetical to ask, should Hamas be dismantled? Refusing a yes or no answer, she said, Hamas is listed as a terrorist organisation and there is absolutely no change that we are demanding in that. Well, that sounds to me like she's in favour of Hamas. Asked the same question she asked who would dismantle the group. It's up to the people in Palestine in that region. Right, okay, so there it is. Who would dismantle the group? The people in Palestine can't dismantle the group because they're dismantling Palestine to make sure that people can live in peace. But I say this again, at the moment, only some people in that region have rights that every human deserves, she said. I don't think these people understand how bad it is. Hamas snubs Muslim nations, strikes down Israel's non-Palestinian post-war Gaza plan. I don't know, what's this about? It's just so all over the place. Hang on. We'll just pause that. Asked one more time whether she would like to see Hamas gone, she said it wasn't a question for her to answer. Well, it is a question for her to answer because she's using taxpayers' money on this issue. Under continuing grilling, Senator Farquhar appeared to support a two-state solution and said the self-determination of Palestinians would still allow for the Israeli state to exist. Asked if she would like to see Israel continue to exist, Senator Farquhar said, of course, there's no question about that, before doubling down on the Greens' position that Palestinians were being denied a state by Israel, which has nothing to do with us. By Israel, the United States and Australia. What a load of hogwash. Her comments were criticised by opposition Senator Simon Birmingham, who called on Labor to stop preferencing the Greens on election how to vote papers. Australian law recognises Hamas as a terrorist organisation, which was tragically justified by their barbaric deeds on the 7th of October, he said. Wow. By not accepting that Hamas terrorists who advocate the destruction of Israel and Palestine should have no rule in the future governance of Gaza, you have to wonder what Senator Farquhar's vision is for Israel and Gaza. The offensiveness and extreme nature of Greens' positions should see Anthony Albanese rule out future preferencing of the Greens so that Labor no longer helps to put such views in Parliament. Conflict in the Middle East was brought to political forefront again last week and we're not going to go down that road. She's just a rogue. We know what she's going to do. Okay, so here's this woman.
Could I just start by tabling UNRWA's latest situation report as of 10th February? I think the Secretariat has the reports, which really paints a picture of...
Sorry, has that been agreed by the committee? I assume that's been agreed.
Sorry, what was that?
She's tabling a report. It's a report we already have, but I'm happy for her to table. But I'm assuming you've agreed it.
No, I'll have a look at it first.
Okay,
As been my past practice, I'll review it before we table. But we can distribute for information only.
I thought we had...
It's not mine.
But
It's the Senators. I'm just asking.
Anyway, the report also reports on at least almost 28,000 Palestinians who have been killed by Israeli attacks. 70% of those killed are reported.
Viewers, this is the Australian Parliament. Right? This is the Australian Parliament. And she's making us indirectly responsible for whatever she's talking about. We're paying taxes for this.
To be women and children, and another almost 68,000 Palestinians who are injured, as well as 156 UNRWA staff who have been killed as of 10th of February. Minister, on 27th January, you announced suspension of funding for UNRWA along with some other nations, effectively punishing 2 million people in Gaza by depriving them of critical support.
No. See, this is where these people aren't wise and they try and play on conscience. We don't supply money to evil organisations if we're aware of it. Now, this woman doesn't agree with that. She believes we should.
UNRWA provides. This is really
because she is an ambassador for Hamas. She did not say that she thinks Hamas should be shut down.
tantamount to the Australian government further inflicting collective punishment on Palestinians, and is in addition to the shielding and aiding of the State of Israel in its mission to annihilate Gaza.
Well, hang on. We don't agree that Israel's going to annihilate Gaza. We agree that, and let's make this clear as Australians, as an ally of Israel, we will make it very clear that we want the annihilation of Hamas, the terrorist organisation. We don't want any problems to come to the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people's problem is Hamas. It's Hamas who are hurting the Palestinian people. She needs to be grabbed by the ear roll, lumbered out of that chair and taken to the Middle East to argue with Hamas. Why is she arguing with us? Penny Wong should tell her to get out.
And massacre tens of thousands of Palestinians. Minister, you have said that you spoke to UNRWA chief, Mr. Philippe Lazzarini, on the 7th of February, which is 11 days after you announced the suspension of the agency's funding based on allegations made by Israel. Minister, did you speak to Mr. Lazzarini before you announced the suspension of funding to UNRWA?
Well, first, I'm going to take issue with the very inflammatory language you've just used.
Now, this is where I get confused with Penny Wong, because she's a fantastic politician. She's got different views, but she, with everything they've done to show these foreigners, I don't know if she'd have to be a nationalised Australian. She's a Pakistani by origin. Penny Wong, and this is what these people aren't getting, Penny Wong's prepared to help Palestine. She's not prepared to help Hamas or any other terrorist group. She's not prepared to enable terrorists. But these people are. And they're trying to make her feel guilty about that. And you can see the venom in the way this person's coming at Penny Wong. And this is a Greens senator. Right? We've got to be aware of what's happening in here now. It's all gone too far. So we'll go back to the Honourable Penny Wong.
Well, first, I'm going to take issue with the very inflammatory language you've just used. And I want to...
Hear, Penny Wong. Hear.
Place on record my deep concern at the way in which some in this debate, I include some members of the Coalition and some members of the Greens, are seeking to engage in what is a very difficult discussion in ways which are inflammatory, relying on often untruths.
Is it untrue that almost 30,000 Palestinians have been killed?
Excuse me, I listen to you politely.
We know the rules.
I listen to you with courtesy.
Please let the Minister finish.
I listen to you with courtesy. I'd ask you that you extend the same to me. The fact is that there is a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. I have said that. And I've also said, as the Prime Minister, we mourn every innocent life, Palestinian and Israeli, that has been lost.
Now, what you've got to understand, viewers, the Labor Party, this is the Foreign Minister for Labor, has done everything transparently that they can to convince the Muslims and these other, what seem to be indirectly associated Hamas, Hezbollah supporters within the Australian politics. And I've got a funny feeling that Penny Wong and these others know that. They have been shown transparently that Australia does not agree with the harm besotting the Palestinian people by way of the Israel's defence of itself. Okay? But Israel has to defend itself. It's got every right to. It's not against the Palestinian people. They're defending themselves against Hamas. And Hamas hide amongst their people. They bomb their own people, right? Deliberately. They use them as human shields. And why should our taxpayers' money go to support that? Why doesn't this woman go to Hamas and complain to them? This is my question.
I think we all know that this is a conflict which is weighing heavily on people in Australia. People who take different views. One of the things that really struck me when I went to the Middle East is how important it is to maintain that we remember our common humanity in the midst of disagreement and conflict, and that we maintain respect for one another, because people come to this country because they want to live in a country that is peaceful, tolerant and respectful. And I would say that all of us...
Here. Let's just play that again. She's telling this woman, watch out, you're in a peaceful country, don't bring your rubbish here.
Conflict. And that we maintain respect for one another, because people come to this country because they want to live in a country that is peaceful, tolerant and respectful. And I would say that all of us who have the privilege of elected office have an obligation to ensure that the distress in our community does not turn to hatred. Now, Senator, the concern I have is that some of your and your colleagues' language appears to be designed, as is Peter Dutton's at times, to whip up
Minister, as you know, I have limited time. I have asked you a question. Could you respond to my question, please?
Senators, please.
I'm
We know...
Chair, I have asked a question. I'll be grateful if the Minister answers that question.
I won't be cutting you short, but just allow the Minister to finish and we'll get through what we need to get through.
I think it is of deep regret that whilst the government is seeking to ensure that distress in our community does not turn to hatred, we see particular members of Parliament who are looking to use this crisis to whip up anger, presumably for votes.
Minister, don't you dare accuse me of whipping up anger and compare me to the people who actually whip up anger.
See, what you've got to understand, viewers, is these foreigners do not like to be confronted. And that's when the violence starts, right? So she's verbally abusing the minister now.
And are divisive.
Please,
Senator,
Sorry, Minister.
Sorry.
Can we just please all cool the temperature a little bit, please?
I'm happy to.
Now, Senator, please allow the Minister just to conclude and we'll quickly come back to your questions.
I would say, Senator Faruqi, even in that question and in many questions you have asked, you persist in making
telling the truth,
inflammatory assertions which are not true.
Minister, did you speak to Mr. Lazzarini before you made an announcement?
Now, we know they're not true because Australia does not endorse the death of innocent Palestinians. But Hamas does, and Hezbollah does. And look at poor Penny Wong. I mean, she's got to try and sort all this out with these foreigners.
To suspend funding. I'm sorry, that's my question. Could you please answer that question?
Well, you just have to wait for that question till the Minister just concludes her answer to your first question.
Thank you.
That is my first question.
Well, there was
and we'll
a lot.
come to it.
Senator Faruqi, you made a lot of loaded assertions, and I'm entitled to respond to them, actually. And I would remind you that we have seen incidents in our community, which included laying false corpses outside of MPs' offices, threatening emails and phone calls to staff in electorate offices, weaponising the imagery of deceased children, spraying fake blood on shop fronts of electorate offices. We have staff who are intimidated and threatened. And what I would say to you is your party has a responsibility, as all of us do, to not legitimise that by using inflammatory language and perpetuating untruths.
Viewers, if you're watching this, you have to take your hat off to Penny Wong. Okay? She's trying as best as she can to put out this fire. She's even gone so far as we saw at the beginning of the video, to haul in the Israeli ambassador and say we will not be your allies. I don't know whether they're managing this the right way. They're trying to show this Muslim people that we are hearing them and that we will do everything in our capability to show them that we're listening. But it's never enough. It's never enough. You've got to take your hat off to Penny Wong.
Because that is what
Telling
you
the
are doing.
truth is not inflammatory
You are
language.
perpetuating an untruth.
No one is perpetuating
You are.
untruths. Which
Because
untruth?
you are asserting that we have cut funding to UNRWA. It
You
is
have
not true.
suspended funding to UNRWA.
May I
That is
finish?
what I have
May I
asserted.
finish?
No.
I have doubled funding to UNRWA. We have suspended, along with many other partners, in the face of serious allegations which UNRWA itself described as serious. Now, there are two truths in relation to UNRWA. The first is it is critical. It's a critical organisation which
I'm
is...
sorry, Minister. Please answer the question. It's like you've been talking about
Faruqi.
without answering the question for the last 10 minutes.
She doesn't want to hear the reality of what's going on. She doesn't want to hear the reality of... See, these cultures don't fit in Australian politics. The Paymans and the Aboriginal lady, Thorpe, this one. And interestingly, they're all women, just for Jacinta Allen of the Victorian Parliament, who thinks that men need behaviour change, and they put a minister for men's behaviour change in. You're never going to get out of this mentality. And even Penny Wong can't help this woman.
Minister, have you concluded your answer?
I'm trying to conclude my
No,
answer.
did you speak to Mr. Lazzarini before you announced the suspension of UNRWA funding? That's my question.
Is that your only question?
Viewers, we're going to have to come back to part 2.